These days, there are quite a few helicopters from Microsoft Flight Simulator. Some are good, others are not so good. But are there any good free helicopters? You won't find much in the marketplace, but there are other places to get modules for MSFS, at least for the PC at any rate. Sorry, Xbox users. One such place is Flightsim.to. Here you'll find a range of both payware and freeware modules. To find the helicopters, go to Other, then scroll down and click on Helicopters. One thing I'll say before we start is you're not going to find study level modules or super realistic flight models from freeware modules. So if you're looking for a top of the range module, you can expect to pay top of the range prices. Also, for my fellow VR pilots, none of these helicopters that I'm going to show you in this video support VR controllers or have VR zoom. But try not to let that put you off, because there's still a lot of potential here. You just need to move your head backward and forwards a little bit more. Today we're going to be looking at 4 of these freebies, and while none of these aircraft are perfect by any means, they're still good fun to fly. First up, we have the SA-342 Gaxelle. Now, the temptation here is to compare this with the Gaxelle from DCS, but this really wouldn't be fair, as the DCS Gaxelle is a paid module and not a cheap one either, developed by a team as a retailable product. This Gaxelle, on the other hand, was created by a community member called Just Remain, who, as far as I can tell, is just an individual who built this thing for fun and was kind enough to share it with the community. It is also listed as a work in progress, so you have to remember that it is not actually quite finished yet. The model itself looks pretty good, and there's even some mechanical animation. I do feel the liveries could use a little improvement, but they're by no means terrible. And you can't see them when you're flying anyway. And although it doesn't have the VR zoom, the gauges are still fairly easy to read, even on the Quest 2. Although when it comes to cockpit interactivity, some stuff works and some stuff doesn't. The big one that doesn't is the starter, but to be fair, the developer does explain this in the description when you download it. But this does mean you can only get so far with the starter before you have to hit Control E. I believe this helicopter uses the native MSFS helicopter flight model, so there aren't really any surprises when it comes to flying it. The big windscreen provides great visibility, and for me this gives it a 1-up on the DCS version because you haven't got all that pesky weapon systems getting in the way taking apart the cockpit. So if you're looking for something with a bit of a military look and feel, then this could be the free bird for you. Our next freebie is the Robinson R44. The R44 is a well-loved classic, and this particular module is Robinson R44 Raven 2 40th Anniversary Edition from Airland. Before the days of native helicopter support, Airland produced a plugin for Microsoft Flight Simulator that provided the flight dynamics required so other third-party helicopter modules could be developed. One of the helicopters they produced to go with this plugin was the R44. When native helicopter support was introduced, they released an updated version of the R44 module to use the native flight model instead. Now, if I'm honest, I've always been a little put off by Robinson helicopters due to their weird central T-bar cyclic. I know that's a rubbish reason, but it just looks weird. However, having flown this thing a few times now, I think I'm starting to make my peace with it. The textures on this are actually quite reasonable. Black and gold isn't really my taste, but they're not bad quality. My only issues are that the gauges are much harder to read in VR without VR zoom, and the GPS only works if you download an additional module, which isn't free. In fact, it's actually quite expensive. This feels a little naughty to me. It's like, hey, here's a free helicopter, but you have to pay extra if you want to actually know where you're going. I haven't bought this module. Instead, I just use the charts on FS Kneeboard. But it does come with a few little extras. We have an optional co-pilot as well as some passengers. If you press this button, it puts a cover over the helicopter, which I only realised when I moved to external view. I spent at least a minute thinking the textures on the windows had broken. Just whatever you do, don't press it while you're flying. Another thing not to do while you're flying is open the doors. The doors do open and close, and if you do it while in the air, you'll overstress the aircraft and be presented with the screen of shame. But the doors can also be removed if you just don't trust yourself. However, provided you can resist the temptation to open the doors or put the dust sheet on mid-flight, this actually feels quite nice to fly. There are also some floats for water landings. However, landing in the water is a little underwhelming. The floats go completely underwater, and you get a cut-up box appear around your fuselage, much like with the Flightsim helicopters. And I find when coming to land, it likes to have a little dip forward and a wobble, just a couple of feet before touching down, just to keep things interesting. But there's nothing about this helicopter that makes me actually recoil, and I've really enjoyed flying it. Next up is the Mosquito. This is the 40th anniversary version, which again uses the native flight model. As the name suggests, this helicopter is tiny, with space for just the pilot and not a lot else. The real-world version of this is available as a kit if you want to save a few $1,000s and are confident in your engineering skills, or factory finished if you want to play it safe. The cockpit, as you'd imagine, is pretty cosy and fairly simple. The doors open and close, although not individually, and you don't appear to be able to remove them like you can with the real-world version. The gauges are nice and easy to read in VR, and there's a pull-out tablet with your GPS system, which is less easy to read, but still provides some useful information. However, it doesn't seem to be possible to align the engine RPM and rotor RPM needles. This doesn't appear to cause the helicopter any issues, but it does look a little strange. The nice, easy to read airspeed gauge tops out at 70 knots, whereas it's quite easy to take the helicopter beyond that without any apparent ill effects. At worst, the pitch becomes a little twitchy. You can also open the doors on the Mosquito in flight, however the only effect this has is to make things louder. This has no apparent effect on the flight dynamics or aircraft stress. On the positive side though, the Mosquito is very easy to manoeuvre. Combine that with its tiny size, and you've got a great little urban explorer that's small enough to get down to street level and weave its way between skyscrapers. How fast you choose to go is purely down to your own reflexes and nerves. All in all, this is a fun little helicopter that fits in some of those places that larger helicopters just can't reach. It's not very fast and has limited range, so I wouldn't use it for long distance, but if you want to take a closer look at a city or some POIs, then this is a pretty good choice. Our final freebie is the H135 from Hype Performance Group. Hype Performance make the very popular H145 paid module and recently released the H160, which I was lucky enough to preview. The H135 was initially released as a sort of taster to tempt you into buying the H145. It was actually one of the first helicopters I got for MSFS before the native flight model was introduced, and if I'm honest, I didn't get along with it initially. So it sat there in my aircraft list, gathering proverbial dust, until I came back to it just a couple of months ago. I updated it to the latest release, and, having a much better understanding of helicopters, as well as how the autopilot is supposed to work, has really turned this thing around for me. This is actually a pretty good helicopter, with a ton of great features. It certainly looks a business. The model and liveries all look good. Inside, the glass cockpit clearly sets it apart from the others, as a much more up-to-date and modern aircraft. And this helicopter also has a tablet, which can be used to operate the autopilot and generally set up the helicopter, including operating the doors. There are 3 big MFDs on the front console, and another navigation system that requires an additional module in the middle. But there's a moving map available on the MFDs, which serves me most of the time. Once you're up and running, be sure to turn on the generators. You'll find the switches at the back of the overhead panel. You'll want to turn on the autopilot as well, as it provides some assistance with general handling. When it's in AP flying mode, it essentially just keeps doing what you're doing when you turned it on. This is especially useful if you want to take off into a static hover. The climb rate can be a little underwhelming when you're hovering, but there is a high NR button near the co-pilot, which gives a short power boost and comes in handy when you need to squeeze a little bit more out of the engines. If you want to change what it's doing, you can use the control knobs on the central pedestal, or just disengage it, make your adjustment and re-engage if you feel like it. Now the H135 flies okay without the autopilot, but it's a much nicer experience with it, and it's intended to be flown with the autopilot turned on, even if it's not engaged. Helicopter autopilots don't tend to work like they do on a plane, where it does everything for you. You can set it to do that on some, but primarily the autopilot on a helicopter is more of a flight assistant. It takes care of some of the more erratic behaviour the helicopters are prone to, so you can concentrate on where you want to go. When you slow down, you'll see a little green dot on the compass on your primary display. This indicates horizontal inertia. If it's in the middle, you're stationary. It's particularly helpful for landing. So, there we have it. 4 helicopters that won't cost you a penny and are a bunch of fun to fly. Each has its own strengths, and I honestly can say which is my favourite. Go ahead, give some a try, and let me know how you get on in the comments. If you know of any other good freebies worth trying, please share those in the comments as well. Until next time, fly safe.